For so long. And they turn in something to me, and it's like, oh, you know, they may not get anything sort of real back. I mean, I got 180 papers to do, so it's like,
like in my 20s, and now I find myself backlashing and wanting to regress and like be more present and like going to dinners and looking across the table and how everybody's on their phones, you know. And I just recently heard, I'm a photographer, I just recently heard some psychologist do a study where she had these, she had her.
I still read books. It was okay. But I think it's scary, and it
comes back. She asked them questions.
All true.
And she was
okay, I'm getting
they were able to recall the RPC cases
I think too,
we were not able to talk about in detail.
And I think having some friends
talked about this is like our world right here.
That's
And
right.
what you talked about is that the disconnection
I'm almost there.
does between.
I think we've got a. I've got it.
Okay, so Austin, can you hear me?
Did I unmute the microphone?
Austin, I think you're still muted. Can you unmute your microphone?
Can you hear me now?
Yay!
All right.
So we are so excited that you were able to take a moment and hang out with us. We have 5 or 6 different rooms full of teachers and students and educators, and they just read different sections of your book, and we're kind of like applying it to education.
Cool.
Here's you guys.
So I'm going to let David, it looks like, do you guys have a question or a thought you would like to share with Austin?
Hey, Austin.
Or Amy? Whoever can go. Amy's live, so we'll go with Amy.
Wait, what?
Amy, what did you guys discuss? What were your thoughts?
Wow. Well, we had the Wunderkammern chapter, so we talked about different ways to open up, well, different ideas we can have in the classroom, actually, to this concept of the cabinet of wonder, and having students curate and collect things over time and annotate them and share them out. And we had quite a few good ideas. I don't know if the particular people with the ideas want to share rather than me. I think they're a little more articulate. So what about the idea you had about, yeah, the decades? Okay, this is a cool idea. She's going to come. Here. She's in green. Okay, just be loud.
Okay. My students in my U.S. history class have been throughout the year doing decade days to learn about the pop culture of the time, and we've been talking about that. And when we did the 80s slang words, they were curious about what their decade would be remembered for. And so I think it would be a neat idea to do a cabinet of curiosities, kind of a virtual treasure chest of what their decade would be remembered for, and artifacts and all kinds of things.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then there was this lovely lady. She's too far away, but her artiste husband collects fortune cookie thingies, and she has this whole big collection. And she's an English teacher, so she's going to use the fortune cookie fortunes as story prompts. So she has hundreds of them, and they sort of tell the story of their life together. And she's going to give like a random 3 to a kid, and they're going to write a story based on these fortune cookie prompts.
Cool.
Cool ideas, yeah. We've had fun. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, Chris.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to start gushing now. I
Who's
can't
next? Unmute your microphone.
No. Can I tell Austin what we've been doing?
Yeah.
So we've been making a quick and dirty. We'll tweet them out. So the quick and dirty is 3 images, 1 question, and an idea or a challenge that we've derived from the chapter. So we'll look for our quick and dirties pretty soon on Twitter.
Cool. Awesome.
And that you're going to use show your work, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, does anyone Does anyone have a question for me that I can help with? Or, I mean, you guys, I mean, one thing that I like about, writing books is it's like you write the book and then, I'm not a teacher, so it's like it's your field of expertise to take the material and, do your thing with it. But if I can answer any questions, I'd love to hear questions.
Austin, how good are you in math? Well, because one of the questions came up. Our focus was think process, not product,
right.
And one of the questions came from a math teacher. And how can we? When is sharing math? When can that be exciting enough? Or how can students share math, the process of math?
That's a really interesting question. I love math, actually. When I was, is anyone else hearing that craziness?
Yeah,
Is it just me?
No,
it's you. Okay.
Press mute.
Everybody mute themselves. No, okay. Yeah, I actually really loved math when I was in school. I kind of consider myself kind of a part, like kind of both left brain and right brain, if you subscribe to those kind of things. But, part of my favorite part in math class was actually doing that's where I first heard show your work, and part of my favorite part of math class was actually making the marks of the calculations. Like algebra was always my favorite, because you start moving things around. It's one of the most like visual math forms, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, how do you? I guess I don't know enough about math to talk about how you could share things in the classroom. Other than, I don't know. I mean, I suppose you could figure out a way to make math visual as much as you can, or you make it. I mean, I think one of the things about sharing is you kind of have to take your work and turn it into some little bits and little media piece, and sometimes that's a picture, sometimes that's sound. Sometimes it's something else, but I wonder if maybe like being able to turn math concepts into tangible pieces of media, maybe that would be the solution. I mean, the cool thing about math is like so much of, well, I don't know, I could go on a tangent about math and how helpful it is, I mean, especially to quote unquote creative folks and artists, I mean, half of what I do all day is math, whether it's like working out web design, I'm sorry, I'm rambling now. Anyway, I don't know. That's a great question. Does anyone else have an idea about it?
That was a good answer. Good answer.
Okay, cool.
We'll move to our next question, which is in the chat from David's group. David writes in the chat, our question is, what if I don't want to share or be on social media?
Well, those are two separate questions. One is I don't want to share. The second is I don't want to be on social media. They're two different things. Social media is one beast, but sharing is actually something that happens across. Sharing can happen one-on-one in a room. It can happen in a public space. It can happen in a private space. So I think one way to become comfortable with sharing online is to first share with the people in your life, in your classroom, or in your environment. And then social media is the way to think about social media is to just it's just like a virtual coffee house basically, or a virtual hangout.
Okay, you want another question? How did
but bigger problems.
Oh.
Go ahead.
On your chapter about trolls, how did you personally overcome trolls in your head?
I don't think I ever did overcome. I mean, the troll in your head, you can kind of quiet him, but he always kind of stays there, you know? For me, it's just really important to, I actually find that routine and habit gets me through moments of doubt more than like figuring out in my head, you know, like if I have a routine established and habits of work, then that pulls me through moments of doubt, and especially self-doubt. And like a concrete example of that is like, you know, you put out a book and you're like, well, what if I'll never write another book again? And you could like sit in your living room and like angst about that forever, right? But if you just say, well, I'm going to go into the studio tomorrow and work from 9 to 5 like I always do, you know, like having that routine and having, you know, my stuff set up, that kind of pulls me through more than you know, I think it really comes down to just having a work habit and a routine and just sticking to that kind of process. But I think the voice, you can quiet it, but it's always there. You know, I'm always self-doubting, you know, just like anyone else.
Yeah. Another question is about vulnerability and sharing.
Mhm.
Teachers are getting vulnerable, sharing the process of writing with their students, really demonstrating that writing is difficult. Do you have like an experience where a teacher shared their struggle with you in their learning in some way, and was that beneficial to you, or how was that beneficial?
Oh wow. God, that's a great question. You know, I had really good teachers. I mean, I actually just it's cool. I just got an award from my high school. I was back in Ohio to receive it, and I actually got to talk to my seventh grade English teacher, who was a huge inspiration to me, and she actually had us, you know, you want to talk about habit and routine, to go back to that question, like she had us, she had our composition books in a bin in the room, and every day at the beginning of class we'd have to go over there, pick up a composition book and write in it. And sometimes she had us like copy poems off the board, sometimes she had us do her own, you know, our own writing. But I think as far as vulnerability, I think if you just like uh, I can't think of a specific instance, but I feel like my best teachers were able to uh, transfer their energy for the subject to me. And I think anytime you kind of open up and transfer energy, there is a certain vulnerability in that, and in being enthusiastic and um, showing your showing your enthusiasm in a way. I don't know if that makes sense, but sorry, I can't come up with a perfect example. Sorry, I guess it's lunchtime on my end or something. Zoning out here.
And someone you may know, I know you've interacted on Twitter, just joined us kind of impromptu, Brad Ovenel Carter. He's in Vancouver,
Oh, hey, man.
if I'm
Hey,
correct.
how you doing?
Brad?
Good to finally say hello.
Hi.
Loved your book. You know, we've obviously got a good bit of buzz around it and around the marginalia and show your work idea. It's been, I don't know what the conversation's been like so far, but it's been one of those books, I'm sure Amy's talked about it as being one of the best books about education that's not about education. And a big push. I think what you've done in a way, line, something that us sort of techie guys have been playing with for a while, and real plain speak that a lot of people can get their head around. And actually recommending it to our school here, that everybody reads it for the school startup.
Awesome.
As we try to shift to connected schools and this, you know, making your work visible, making process visible, and all the rest of it. The tone of your book, for me anyways, and the people I've shown it to, has said it's okay, it's safe, the language isn't technical, it's just somebody who's coming at this in a way that understands how work happens now in this connected world. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because like when I was doing the book, I very intentionally decided not to mention open source and anything like technical like that. For one thing, open source has its own ethos, and the people are fighting their own battles, and kind of like that's a world that I don't know enough about to kind of use their language. I think both of my previous books, in a way, stole ideas from very particular communities without using their language. Like, I always thought this book was kind of like an open, it took stuff from open source and also content marketing and content strategy, which were fields that I I kind of almost wanted to see if I could write a book about content marketing without using the terms content or marketing. But that's just kind of like behind the scenes stuff. I think it's interesting when you start doing books like. But I want to get back to the education. Books about education. I mean, that aren't really about education. Like I actually felt like both of my books were about education in a weird way. And I don't know if that's just because, both my parents are teachers. I kind of have it in my blood, and I've always felt like learning was really the root of all my work, of all work in particular. And so to write a book about art or work and not have it somewhat be about education would seem almost kind of strange to me. But thank you for your nice comments.
Yeah. Well, I think in general, I think it's something education needs to learn to do is to the equivalent of steal like an artist. We're really bad at looking at navel gazing, and I think the answers to a lot of our problems are going to come from, as you found out, from stealing from these other industries, whether it's marketing or social media or business and all the rest of it. I think our answers are going to come from something there that we take and mash up in some way.
Yeah, I've always found it strange how people always look for the answers to their problems within their own field, because it's always felt like to me a lot of the problems that I had with writing or getting a career jump started with writing or something like that were, it was much easier to steal answers from like other disciplines like filmmaking or design or, but I'm also someone who's always been interested in a bunch of different things and had my toes in many different ponds, so and so I also went to an interdisciplinary school, so that kind of thinking that you would pull in, you would approach a problem using tools from several different disciplines, that's always just kind of been built into my thinking.
Thanks. Yeah.
Any other questions from folks?
We do have a couple more. If you have time for a couple more?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, how did you get over feeling? How did you get over your feeling of vulnerability when you're sharing your work?
I think it's really funny that everyone assumes that I've gotten over some sort of fear. I don't really. I mean, it's funny. Like, I always felt like obscurity was much worse than vulnerability. I mean, I'm someone who has always wanted to have my work out in the world and to find a spot for myself, and it became very apparent to me that like sharing things was the only way that I was going to move from obscurity to being known. But mainly what I found out about vulnerability is that sometimes screwing up is way more educational. Actually, I would say that on the whole, screwing up in public is way more educational than succeeding in a lot of ways. I mean, anytime I've kind of stuck my foot in my mouth online or talked about something that I really didn't have any business talking about because I was undereducated about it, one of the things I found is that even if I got kind of flamed from people, those were the moments I really learned something. I had this great, but that's happened a lot to me, like where people say, actually, you're wrong, and you should look at this, and and I was like, well, this is more helpful than me being right. Because if I'm right and people are just like, yeah, you're right, dude, then I haven't really learned anything. you know. And so I think what I found is just that if you're ready to be wrong in front of other people, that's when you're really going to learn something.
I love that. Not to say
And
you're
I can
right.
give you concrete examples, but you
No,
know,
you're wrong.
general principle, you know.
This is from Allison's group. Do you have any ideas about how to foster trust in larger communities to encourage sharing?
Wow. You know, I think what I've decided about community building is that it really starts with you. I mean, it sounds kind of cliche, but I think it's like you operate the way you want other people to operate. You know, just golden rule stuff. And if you set a good example and you are very clear about what you'll tolerate and what you won't, and you know, if you have a clear idea of how you want to proceed and how you want others to proceed, I think just leading by example. And you know, in terms of the book, you know, it's like don't be a vampire human spam. You know, it's like just making that decision for yourself not to operate that way. It's contagious, you know. So if you decide to contribute something to your community, I think contribution and generosity is contagious. I like this one question from Sean about the interdisciplinary school. I went to public schools. I mean, I went through the public school system. The interdisciplinary school was in college, actually. It was at a public school called Miami University in Ohio, and the interdisciplinary program was just part of the university. Just to clear that up.
Okay. Well, I think that's about it. We want to honor your time. I know your kid's nap time is about over, and you want.
Yeah, he's up. So yeah, but my wife's covering for me. So.
Oh, okay.
I got time for like one more question. If anyone's got one more question.
Anybody have another question? They could either jump in or put it in the chat.
Well, I have
like a 5-second wait time, or maybe.
I have too many questions. So I don't have one. But you know, I think one of the common things that we're seeing among educators, and I think we've been insulated in our classrooms for so long, and I just think and maybe just a bigger question for everyone is how do we break out of that, because that seems to be a common thread. How can we be willing to be vulnerable? And in your in chapter 2, the think process, you talked about it's messy. Process is messy, and we have to be willing to show our mess to other people, and that's kind of one of the big hurdles I think we still need to overcome as teachers.
I think that's a hurdle everyone has to overcome. I think we're kind of, I don't know, we're living in this weird culture now where we have the ability to share anything we want, but we're all self-editing in this strange. We all have a tendency to self-edit. It's weird in a culture in which you can share anything. It's become oddly self-editing. Like, I find my impulse to self-edit, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But the whole idea of keeping up appearances is, there's that temptation. But I really think that for me, if you just make that dedication to learning in front of others, to me, that's really the leap. If you say, like, I'm willing to learn and screw up in front of other people because that's going to make me better, that's the real leap. It's not like, oh, I got to get over my fear or whatever. I really feel like it's just like once you make that dedication to I'm going to learn stuff in front of other people, I think that's when the good stuff happens. I think. I don't know. Anything else? Oh, hey, thanks.
Yay!
So I'm actually I'm on Twitter and stuff. So if anybody's got any other questions, like I'd be happy to. It might take me a while, but I'll shoot you an answer eventually. Otherwise, thanks for reading the book and having me on. But I'm pretty easy to find, so.
Thank you so much for Austin. Just kind of found out about this a couple days ago and was actually going to do this with us yesterday, even though it was his wife's birthday.
Yeah.
Hopefully you guys had a good day.
Yeah, we had a great day. So.
Thank you so much for joining us, Austin. We love your book and had a great time chatting with you.
Cool. Thanks, y'all. All right.
Thanks, Austin.
Take it easy.
Bye.
All right.
Everybody,
Bye.
don't get out of the hangout. I've got a couple of announcements.
All right.